All right, welcome everyone. The tape officially starts here. Notice I still call it a tape? Gosh, am I getting old? What the heck? This is Introduction to Meditation, and the subtitle is Toward a Balanced Lifestyle. And I think the subtitle here is really important, because why are we doing this? Why are we meditating? Why are we going to spend the time, doing this kind of activity? It's not just to feel more spiritual or to be more holy or in any way esoteric. It's because it is going to directly affect the quality of our lives. I mean, that's why we should do everything we do, I would suppose, right? It's going to directly affect the quality of our lives. And so that's what we want to stress, and that's what we're going to be working on in here, is trying to connect those dots at every step of the way. The format is, we're getting started a little late here, but every session, it was originally scheduled to be 3 sessions, but I went ahead and lengthened it to 4 because I know that questions and answers and late starts and everything intervene. And every session we want to actually do a meditation sit. We're going to start short. Tonight we're only going to do 6 minutes. And then we'll lengthen that each one of our sessions. And so I'm hoping by the last time we're at least up to 15 minutes or so. All right? And but even 6 minutes, if you've not done this before, is going to maybe feel long. It may feel real short, just depends on where you are. But with 10 minutes to go in the session, we'll stop wherever we are, and I'll introduce to you just the basics of just a following the breath type of meditation tonight, and we'll do it for 6 minutes because we want to start getting the feel of it. In fact, maybe we'll stop a little sooner because it would be good for us to have a little bit of time to talk about and process a little bit about what you experienced and to hear everybody else's experience in the sit. So we'll maybe have to stop earlier, but let's see how far we can get through the outline here. And if we don't hit all this stuff, that's okay. You got the format. One of the things that is always driving the effect as a faith community, as a group, there's 2 pillars to that. And the first pillar is understanding Jesus from a first century Hebrew point of view. So those of you who've been with us, you know that that's one of our hallmarks. And by doing that, we are taking a look at the words of Jesus as preserved in the New Testament from a very practical, ground level, just daily activities of living type of lens or filter. Because what Jesus gives us is a way of living life. He's not giving us an esoteric theology. He's not even really trying to establish a new church. A new church was established around his teaching, but what he was doing was working within the faith community that he already had, within Judaism. But within that faith community, within that religion, he was trying to bring people back to a direct experience of the Father's presence and the Father's love. By the time that Jesus comes on the scene, the Pharisees and other religious leaders had inserted themselves between the people and the experience of their God. Jesus was trying to take out the middleman and allow people to directly come into contact with Father. He called that state of being, that quality of life, kingdom. That's his word for this, living this way. We would probably call it a contemplative lifestyle. For me personally, as I was getting kicked out of the doctrinal nest of the church that I was in and started this line of study to find out if there was a Jesus that I could follow for the rest of my life, and discovered this Hebrew Jesus, the complementary part that connected with that and brought all the pieces together was when I was introduced to Christian contemplative life. And that was an American Catholic priest who I went to talk to try to get some kind of answers. I was in such a tumult, and he took me to a Catholic bookstore and started pointing out books. And as I was introduced to Thomas Merton and Henry Nouwen and Brennan Manning, and then they introduced me to Augustine and so on and so forth, I started to realize that there was a way of living the Christian life that I had never been taught before. That was exactly what I've just described to you about what Jesus was trying to do with his people. And so the contemplative way of life, what's that all about? Well, it means different things to different people, but for our purposes, it's what I was just saying. To live contemplatively is to live with a heightened sense of awareness, presence, of everything that's around us, the people that are around us, nature that is around us, and of course God's presence that is infusing and instilling and making everything possible around us, is to live with that kind of awareness and that kind of connection with everything there is. And that, if you don't see how that's going to improve your quality of life, you know, it's amazing. It's an amazing difference. How do we cultivate that kind of life? Paul calls it continuous prayer. Not a continuous stream of words, either mentally or verbally, but a continuous awareness of God's presence, a continuous sense of gratitude for the connection of everything and your place in it. A seat at the table, if you will. How do we cultivate that? Well, we're going to cultivate it in two ways, and we'll talk about those two ways. Offline and online. The offline is the meditative practices. It's going into your prayer closet. It's taking a set amount of time and going offline to your life and spending that time in some sort of meditative, centering prayer, or other types of activities that are going to help you to practice presence, is what we're actually doing. And then online is going to be mindfulness. It's a practicing of presence throughout your daily activities. And so there's going to be these two twin ways that we are going to try to cultivate and practice the art of, also the science of, being present. What's actually happening in your brain as you move into these different states. So we're going to talk about those just briefly, but just enough, hopefully, so you can get the concept of what we're doing. And this is how meditation is going to help us get to this balanced lifestyle we're talking about. As we go through this, you know, obviously I'm going to be presenting a lot of things here, but please, if there are questions, ask them. You know, just jump in. Even Gail and Bill, if we're not muted, can jump in and ask questions like that.
We will, thank you.
All right. Is this amazing? We're sitting here, and they're here from Minnesota talking to us. Okay, I just, sometimes every once in a while, technology just kind of blows me away. All right, so any questions so far about any of this? Okay, I know for some of you this is a little bit of a review, but I want to just make sure we're all on the same page. So the question becomes, what is meditation? And meditation means a lot of different things, again, to a lot of different people, and there are different ways to look at meditation. Meditation, you know, I suppose if we think about it, or even to meditate on something, to contemplate something, is to really think deeply about it, to really consider all the pieces and consider the ins and outs of something. That's exactly not what we're going to do here. We're going to take a look at meditation and contemplation in basically coming from the other side, 180 degrees, where we're going to be trying to step away from that stream of thoughts. We're going to try to disengage from the stranglehold that our egoic mind, and I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but the mind that talks to us, the mind that has the sense of its own self, cognitively speaking, that is a byproduct of our self-awareness, and it continues to distract us from deeper presence, and so we're going to try to step away from that. So as we talk about the techniques that we're going to talk about in meditation, what we're talking about is to try to not quiet the mind, but disengage and not choose to focus on any one thing that is being presented to us at the moment, either internally through our thought processes or externally through any of the billions of distractions that we can focus on if we want to. Sometimes it's called choiceless awareness. You know, you're aware of things, but you choose not to focus on any one of them. For the purposes of what we're talking about here, a thought is anything that brings our attention to a focus. Whether it's an itch on your leg, it's a horn honking in the parking lot, it's the person next to you's stomach rumbling, or it's the thought about whether you left the porch light on. It's anything that brings your attention to a focus. That's a thought, and we're trying to step away from those thoughts. And so that is going to be the way, that's the goal of what we're doing. I don't know if that sounds easy to you or simple to you. It's incredibly difficult. When you get right down to it and you think, and let me ask you this, if you were to try to put a number, a percentage, on how much of the time during your day that you are not thinking about the thing that you're actually doing. In other words, your mind has wandered off of the task at hand, the person right in front of you. Could you put a number to it? How often do you live in a state where you're not thinking about the thing you're actually doing? A lot. You know, the national average by some researchers' estimation is 49%. Okay, so that means half the time people on average their mind has wandered. They're not thinking about what they're doing anymore. As we've gone through in teaching and working with recovering people, they report 90% plus of the time they're not thinking about. And you can try to come up with the amount of time that you think that you spend. But even if it's the average, half your life, you're not really present. Half your life, you're kind of sleepwalking through your moments. What we want to do is practice presence so that that changes. There are times when we need to be thinking about something other than what we're doing, to be able to go into our minds unconstrained and think abstractly and think creatively and do those things and plan for the future and learn from the past. There's times that we need to do that as human beings. But the thing is that we get the plane circling the airport and we never bring it in for a landing. That's what we want to change. We want to spend most of our time immersed in, aware of, and present to what's right in front of us, with these trips sometimes into Neverland, and then we come back again. So think of yourself like a prairie dog living in your burrow. Every once in a while you pop up and you take a look around, make sure there's no predators, see where your hole is at, and then you go back down and you live in your tunnel again. You know, maybe not the best analogy, but all right. I hope it gets you the point, though. We want to live our lives here and now. And let's go ahead and let's read through this handout, which is what meditation is not. And sometimes it's easier to figure out what something is if we contrast it with what it's not. So that's the 2-page deal. And it's like really nice big print too, so this is cool. I can read this. All right, so before knowing anything about meditation, it's important to familiarize ourselves with all those practices and beliefs which are often considered as meditation but are not meditation. Meditation is not concentration. A big misconception. Meditation is just one form of concentration. When you concentrate, you constantly project your attention toward a particular task or activity, whereas in meditation, you do not project your attention toward a particular task or activities. You just remain aware of the moment without choosing anything to concentrate upon. Concentration is important for learning meditation. It will greatly help you, particularly in the initial phase, in learning meditation. However, it is not meditation. All right? Now, this is just important to just hold on to. You know, you're going to be aware of everything that's going on around you. If you're sitting in a meditative state right now in this room, you'd be aware of the sound of the air conditioner that's going on. You'll be aware of the sound of whatever is rustling. You'll be aware of everything. And you'll be more awake than you normally are. But you're not going to be choosing to focus on anything. And that changes the nature of your presence. Okay? Yeah.
I find when I try to meditate that I'm constantly making a decision. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to focus on that or whatever. And so there's a part of me, an element of me that is in charge and focusing. I'm not focusing. And I'm not trying to make a joke. It really, and it gets to be compounding a distraction, because it's like, who's talking to the guy who's not supposed to be focusing? And I have no idea how to quiet the mind enough to make that stuff go away.
Okay, so you get the nature of the question? All right. We're going to do a consciousness exercise a little bit later. It won't be today. Talking about that part of you that is what some traditions call the watcher or the knower. So we're going to talk about that and the difference between that and the egoic mind that you're more familiar with. So we'll get into that. Just for now, as you're sitting in a meditation sit, as you'll be doing in a few minutes here, if you feel that, let's say it's a frustration, you know, that, my gosh, I can't do this, and then you start talking to yourself about what you can and can't do, and this is, I'm just terrible at this, and I'll never, how am I supposed to? That is just another thought for you to step away from. So today we're going to practice the anapanasati, that's the Buddhist following the breath technique. So you would return to the breath. And every time that you are telling yourself, I'm just terrible at this, that's just another thought, and you just return to the breath. You try not to hang on to those. You try not to give them any emotional valence for you. What you want to do is turn that around and say, okay, instead of I have failed at this again and again and again, every 30 seconds I'm failing again. No, every 30 seconds you have an opportunity to practice coming back to presence. You see the difference in that? So it's another opportunity to practice. Because the more times that you come back to the present from wherever your mind takes you, the better you're going to be at coming back to present. And the whole goal of doing this is not so that you can sit in your prayer closet and do this well. It's so that when you are going through your day and being emotionally triggered and having all the stresses and strains and the difficulties that life presents to you, you can come back to present. So you're practicing for your life is what you're doing in the offline times so that you can practice and maintain mindfulness, continuous prayer during your online times. So it's just you're going to treat those internal frustrations or thought patterns arising from meditation the same way that you would treat anything else that brings your attention to a focus. And you're going to try to just lay it down. Give yourself a break. This is not easy to do. Why do you think so few people really practice any form of meditation on any ongoing basis? Especially here in our culture today that has gotten so noisy, so fast, so complicated, and within a culture that doesn't even value silence anymore, doesn't even value a slower lifestyle, sees it as a weakness, sees it as laziness, sees it as a lack of ambition. We have so many cultural barriers to move through, both internally and among the people that may know that you're trying to do something like this, beyond just the interior, normal human nature barriers that we're trying to cross as we do this. So just realize all that's in play and just keep coming back. Yeah?
When the Muslims are called to prayer, is that what that's about? Or no? Is it just rote prayer?
If it's done well, yes. So it's not just the Muslims, but also the Jews had set times of prayer during the day where they were called to prayer. And of course the Muslims do it, at certain times. But it's exactly that. It's a call to remembrance. When the sound, the call to prayer happens at the time of day, and they pull out their mat and they place it down and they face east and they touch their forehead to the ground, it's a time for them to just block everything out. Now, like anything else, it can become just a ritual that you do unthinkingly. It's just like if you were raised in a liturgical church, a Catholic church or an Episcopal church, and you went through the liturgy of the Mass, and it was just a thing that you did, then it doesn't really have the kind of meditative value that we're talking about. But if you really enter into the liturgy, it's incredibly powerful. I never understood the rosary. It was just juvenile torture for me to have to sit there and go through the rosary. But to understand the purpose of prayer beads, it's the same thing. To give your cognitive mind a mindless task to do as you count off the beads. And in some Buddhist tradition, you count off the breaths in the same way. It's just to let that cognitive part of your brain, as some people call it the monkey brain. You're giving the monkey brain a banana. It goes and sits on a branch somewhere and eats the banana. And for that period of time, you are free to be present where you are. So yes, it can be a beautiful time. In fact, for you all, and I've said this before sometimes, set on your cell phones, a special sound that will sound at 3 times during the day. That is your call to just come back. Now, if you pull out a rug and touch your forehead to the floor, you're going to get some funny looks from your coworkers, but it's just a time for you internally to come right back to center again. Use the same techniques that you use, even if you're sitting at work or wherever you happen to be, and just come back to center. You can be driving in your car, and you can still come back to center. You don't close your eyes, but you come back to center. And that's the practice of this that can happen during the day. So it's a beautiful tradition, but it depends on each individual to use it in the way that takes them to this place. Make sense? Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah.
And I might be splitting hairs here, but you said meditation is not concentration, but the meditation we're going to do today, we're required to concentrate on our breath.
Not concentrate. No, it's different. It's just be aware of it. Okay? So, and there is a fine line here. And it may be at the beginning that you're going to have to concentrate on it. In fact, I'll even suggest that maybe at the beginning, while it's difficult for you to do this, maybe you do try counting your breaths in groups of 10, like some traditions suggest. Maybe that's a way for you to really be able to focus if your mind is just so scattered. But there is a fine line of difference. It's not the kind of concentration where you're really trying to grab onto it. It's an awareness of the breath that you return to just kind of step away and put down all the other thoughts that are coming. So it's a nuance, but see if the difference makes sense to you. If you are straining to focus on the breath, then you need to relax a little bit more than that. It shouldn't feel like a strain, if I can put it that way to you. Meditation is not relaxation. Boy, did that segue or what? What does relaxation do? It relaxes you. It makes you calm. It gives you a sense of serenity and rejuvenates you. Meditation also makes you relaxed, but meditation is not relaxation. When you meditate, its natural outcome is relaxation. Okay, so this is kind of a cause and effect thing. It's not the relaxation that is the goal. The relaxation is the byproduct. The goal is to be in a state of choiceless awareness, to not choose to think about anything, to focus on anything. Even though the thoughts may be swirling around you, you focus on none of them. All right? And so the end result of that is going to be feeling a certain sense of calm and peace. If you've done this for 20 or 30 minutes and you haven't moved a muscle, it's almost like being in a sensory deprivation chamber where you almost don't feel your body anymore. And you're just kind of in place. You're there. And it's a really interesting feeling. So you're going to be in a relaxed state, but that's not what the meditation is. The meditation is something else. So, makes sense? Again, fine line. Meditation is not a serious religious practice. Meditation is not a specific ritual demanding sitting in a particular posture, chanting some specific mantras, powerful words having phonetic significance, or burning incense. Neither does it mean doing a particular exercise in a particular pose. Meditation is a quality of our existence. When you are aware of your true self, quote unquote, and perform anything, yes, I mean anything with awareness, it becomes meditation. So you can be doing your work, whatever it is, at your desk or at your workplace as meditation if you are completely focused on what you're doing and you're doing it with a sense of that connection, that expanded awareness around you. You can be doing that meditatively. I meditated so hard as I was driving to an appointment yesterday morning that I missed 3 exits on the freeway. That wasn't meditation. I'm messing with you now. But it was the alpha state, which is where we're going in meditation, and we'll talk about what that means. But that road hypnosis is a dropping into the alpha state, and it's not a good thing. But yeah, but you can. That's the thing that's so important to understand. This can be done in place. It can be done online as well as offline. But to go offline into our practice room, into our prayer room, and practice these techniques so that we get good enough at them that they will be available to us when all heck is breaking loose. That's where we want to get. It is true that it takes some time to learn meditation, and it requires some genuine effort on the part of seeker to learn meditation. But it does not mean that meditation is connected with any specific religion or ritual. Anybody, irrespective of his background, religion, caste, creed, or nationality, can do it. Meditation is not even a serious thing. Once you understand it, it will be pure fun to meditate. That's important for us to understand. And it's something that I think is a little bit later on in the outline, but we might as well hit it right now. Some of you who grew up in conservative churches, especially evangelical churches or Baptist churches over here, you may have been taught that meditation is an occult practice. It's something that's evil, it's something of the devil, and it's something that really needs to be avoided. I know I was taught that if you empty your mind of everything, what you're doing is you're opening a gateway for the devil or demons to come into you. And they'll use the scripture of Jesus talking about the man who was exorcised of a demon and the house was swept and clean, and then the demon traveled the waterless places and then came back and brought 7 other demons worse than himself, so that the man's state at the end was worse than it was to beginning. This is to misunderstand what meditation is all about. Meditation actually is a physical activity. It's really not spiritual at all. What we're doing is we're trying to get the physical activity of the brain out of the way so that our spirit can come forth. That knower, that watcher, that deeper self can be present to and directly interface with God's presence and the awareness of everyone else around. So it's not religious. It's not even spiritual. It's a tool. If you want to use meditation as a completely secular practice, the way you would use going to the gym, you can do that and get lots of benefit from it. But it won't take you anywhere spiritually unless that's where you're trying to go. And if you are bringing your sense of yourself as a theist, someone who believes that God is an actual entity, a person who can be communicated with, and as a Christian, then that's what you're going to find. That's what you are going to access as you start to practice this. And so it is nothing to be afraid of, is what I'm trying to say. There's nothing to worry about. You're not going to be led into error, and you're not going to burn in hell. It's nothing like that. This is another tool for us to be able to use. Even conservative churches use worship music as a means to be able to clear the decks and allow people to be able to access a deeper state, a deeper sense of connection with God. It's the same thing. Worship music is really, really simple, with very simple lyrics. And it's so simple that when I first started playing it, I needed to jazz it up. I needed to complicate it because it just seemed too boring, too simple for me. And so I thought it was my duty to make it more interesting, until I finally understood this concept right here. And I was doing the exact worst thing that I could do to worship music. Worship music is simple. After one hearing, you should be able to sing it. After one singing, you should be able to forget about the singing. Because you don't have to think about it anymore. It's not challenging you in any way. It's just giving, again, the monkey brain something to do while you get to come out and just be. And so it envelops you, puts you on a conveyor belt that takes you someplace. But that's the use of worship music. And Taizé, Marion and I went to a Taizé service. It takes it to the next level, where literally you're singing. It's like musical Lectio Divina. You take one line of scripture or whatever it happens to be, and you sing it over and over and over. And from the adherents' point of view, just the members' point of view, it never changes. You're singing the same thing over and over and over. It's not boring, though, because the choir is singing what are called descants. They're counter melodies and things that move around, and that changes the nature of it. But you are singing the same, and it's just getting drilled deeper and deeper and deeper down into your spirit, and you get lost in the movement of it. It's an amazing experience. Taizé, T-A-I-Z-E. It is the town in France where the monastery is situated for the monks that developed this form of worship. So for shorthand, they just call it Taizé. But if you look it up or take a listen, just see what you think. But it's incredibly simple, much simpler than the worship music that we certainly do. But it's the same idea. And so there's nothing to be afraid of. What you bring to the experience is your intent. Your intent has everything to do with what you're going to take away. All right? So, not to be afraid. Any questions about that? Meditation is not a state of mind. Rather, it's a state of no mind. Many gadgets are available in the market that promise to take us into a meditative state, often known as the alpha state of mind. I should know, I've tried most of them. Scientists have observed that there are basically 4 states of mind, depending on the frequency of brain waves, mind waves. These stages are alpha, beta, gamma, and theta. Beta is the state in which we live and perform all our day-to-day activities. Alpha is the state just below beta. The alpha state is often known as a state of meditation. Gamma and theta are also states of mind in further depth. Actually, they got these a little bit wrong. This I took from a website. Gamma is actually higher brain waves than alpha. and is associated with a state of flow that some of you know about if you're artists or sports people. And then alpha is the lightest stage of sleep. It's a lowest brainwave. And then below that is theta, and then the deepest stage of sleep is delta. So we'll talk about more of those later. But just know that what we're doing is we're going to be dropping our, if you put an EKG on your head as you were doing this, as they've done with monks, you would see that your brain activity would drop down to a lower frequency rate. And so, and that's where we want to go. But we're not going to fall asleep. We're going to be awake, even though our brain waves are dropping as they would if we fell into a light, the first stage of sleep. We are not going to be asleep, which directly affects the posture that we adopt, which we're going to talk about that in a few minutes as well. Now, what all these specific gadgets can do, can do is to take us into the state of alpha. In the alpha state, one becomes still, tranquil, and calm. There is no tension, no stress. Your whole inner being becomes peaceful. But please note that alpha state itself is also not meditation. Alpha is a state of mind in meditation. Meditation is the awareness of our true self in the alpha. You'll be in meditation if you remain awake and aware of the present moment in the alpha state of mind, that is the state of absolute calm. No gadget or mechanical device can create awareness. They can only create the right condition for us to realize what is true awareness. And I don't know if you're familiar with some of these kind of biofeedback devices. You know, some of them are glasses. The ones I did were glasses, and they have LEDs, you know, in each lens that fire back and forth, and they start at a high frequency, and then they drop, and then you're wearing earbuds that are firing pulses of sound at you that are synchronized with the lights. And so the idea is that it's synchronizing the two hemispheres of your brain, and it starts at the frequency of beta and then slowly drops you down into alpha. And there's a cycle to it, and it moves you around. And first time I did that, I was done for the rest of the day. We went, a friend of mine went during lunch break and went to this place that had these devices, and you lay down and you do this. And I was so buzzed afterwards, I couldn't even return to work. But it's like anything else, you keep doing it, and it reduces its effectiveness. And just like a drug, you never get back to the same original high. But that's all that any of these devices are doing. They're trying to drop your brain waves down for you. We're going to do it naturally, you know, through the meditative practice to allow your mind to drop to this lower frequency. But yes, since I didn't know what I was doing, and I was just doing it kind of for the novelty of it at that point, I wasn't developing that sense of awareness that is really the meditative state. Okay? All this making a certain kind of sense? You doing all right? Yeah, we're gonna after we do this, we're gonna talk about our first set. Meditation is not self-hypnosis. In both self-hypnosis and in many techniques of meditation, at least an initial period of concentration on an object is required. However, in meditation, the meditator maintains an awareness of here and now and stays conscious of the meditative process, which is not exactly the case in hypnosis. In hypnosis, the person enters into a state of semi-consciousness or semi-conscious trance and becomes unaware of the moment, which is not the case in meditation. So you're not going to go into a trance. You're not going to miss any exits on the freeway. You know, it's not going to be like that. You're going to be aware, maybe even more aware than you typically are in a given moment. But you're not going to be choosing to focus on anything in that sphere of awareness. Okay? And finally, meditation is not thinking. Rather, it's the process of transcending the thought process. Our mind is a non-stop chatterbox that continues to create all sorts of good, bad, relevant, irrelevant thoughts incessantly. In meditation, we realize that we are not just our body and mind. There exists in us an awareness independent of all kinds of thoughts. Knowing this awareness is what meditation is all about. Now, I want you to think about Jesus' words right at the top of Matthew 7, where he says, "Do not judge." All right? Because the standard by which you judge, you will be judged. Think about that. We normally think about it in terms of putting a bias or putting a bad thought or a denigration on another person. Don't do that. You know, it becomes just good manners or good relationship. But what he's really talking about here is that conscious mind, the process of constantly putting labels on everything, putting them into boxes, categorizing them, creating an us-them type of situation, subject-object type of situation, but to let all of that go. So now, yes, judgment can refer to human relations as well, but think about in these terms what Jesus is really saying. If you can stop that process, if you can just let that process go within your own mind, how is that going to change the nature and the quality of your presence? So this is really what it's all about. We're going to stop the normal thinking process that can't help but put things into categories, create the edges around them, the handles for us to be able to grab them. That's why even our thoughts about God have to be let go of. If we really want to approach God, if we want to speak to God in God's native language, we can't put him into words, because as soon as we do, we're judging, we're creating the edges into which God can never fit, if you want to look at it that way. Make sense? Okay. From a meditator's point of view, the saying of Descartes, I think, therefore I am, is not true. A meditator will say, I am, therefore I think. Kind of turning that thing around. All right. Any questions about any of that? Does that make it a little bit clearer? All right. Well,
Spirit involved in any of the meditation work? Like, I don't know, capturing your thoughts?
Is the Holy Spirit involved in capturing your thoughts?
Yeah, like in the meditative, you're speaking meditation, and the Holy Spirit can, put you in that state, I believe, too, what you're talking about, and go even deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Also capturing your thoughts that you don't want there.
Well, as Christians, as theists, we believe that the Spirit is involved in all of this. Right. We cannot love except that God has loved us first. That tag to the prayer that we use from 1 John. And so, yeah, it's really the Spirit's action that is enabling all of this. All of it. We can't do any of this except that the Spirit did it first. And so really what we're coming to is this is allowing us to clear the decks so that we can actually apprehend Spirit without words and be completely connected, interfaced with Spirit, with no barrier, nothing in between us. In a complete experience. It's like in a human relationship where you feel the closeness to the extent that you're willing to become vulnerable to the other person. Drop all your defenses, all your pretenses, all your projections, just open up and let them in. And you're making yourself vulnerable to get hurt. Now we're doing the same thing with God. We are just taking away anything that is a barrier, any emotional program, any projection of ourself, even interiorly, that we're hanging on to because it feels like life and it feels like survival and it feels like our identity, the willingness to let that go. And so then when you start listening to Jesus' words in relation to that, unless you're willing to be crucified, pick up your cross and follow me, unless you're willing to lose your life, then you will never find me. So if you put that into the context of what we're talking about, you see where he's going. When we look at Jesus from that first century Hebrew point of view, we find out that he is a contemplative as well. He's approaching this removal of the middleman in the same way. But yes, Spirit. So you can use that, As you start your meditative practice, the short prayer at the beginning is, prayer to the Spirit. Spirit, help me, remove all these things, take all these things. Now, you're going to have to partner with Spirit in order to make that happen. It's not going to happen with you passively sitting and continuing to think about all this stuff. But Spirit, of course, is the whole reason for the season, if you want to think of it that way.
And the worship music, too, it prepares your heart.
Exactly. Same thing.
Okay.
Same thing. So this is another technique. Worship music is one technique. Prayer beads are another technique. Meditation is another technique. All right. So what we're going to do right now, and for 6 minutes, and I'm going to describe the process, and then I'm going to have to turn off the tape because I need my phone to be able to use the timer. So we'll do that. What we're going to do is posture is going to be very important. So when you do meditation, since we don't want to fall asleep, today we're going to do them in chairs with backs. I mean, traditionally, a lot of times you're just sitting on the floor, maybe on a cushion, cross-legged, full lotus position, if you can physically do that, and actually no back support. Because what you want to do is to be in a position that is erect enough and balanced enough that you're not going to feel like you can go to sleep. So in here, what we're going to do is we're going to sit with our back straight up against the backrest, our feet flat on the floor. If you cross your legs or do anything else, what can happen is that you're going to stop the circulation, and a foot's going to go to sleep, or something's going to happen, and you got something else to think about, something else to deal with. What we want to do is remove all that possibility. So with your back straight, your feet flat on the floor, in a comfortable position, and most importantly, your head balanced. So many times when we do this, people want to lean their head back against the wall. As soon as you do that, you're priming yourself to go to sleep. That's why it's very difficult to do meditation lying down, because the tendency is you're going to go to sleep. Now, if you're going to use this because you can't sleep and you're going to use this technique to get to sleep, then great. But remember, that's a different motive with a different outcome. So sitting comfortably in the seat with your back straight, your head balanced, and your feet flat on the floor, what do you do with your hands? Well, there's a lot of different things you can do with your hands. They can just be comfortably, on your thighs or whatever you want. A typical pose, though, is to have the palms up. It's kind of a pose of supplication. It's kind of a pose of receiving spirit. And they can be this way, or a lot of times it's one hand inside the other, just in your lap like this. Whatever feels more comfortable to you. If you want to interlace your fingers, of course, that's fine. But again, just don't do anything that's going to cut off any circulation. This pose here that you often see, the idea is that the energy of the body is flowing out through the fingertips, and that's returning it back in a circular pattern. So if that feels natural to you, or whatever you want to do, that's fine. But again, I typically just do this, but anything that is comfortable for you. Your eyes are going to be closed. Your lips are going to be sealed, and in such a way that your jaw can just kind of hang, in a relaxed state, but your mouth stays closed because you want to breathe through your nose, okay? Now we are going to use, as I said, it's the Anapanasati method just right now. That literally means in Sanskrit, mindful breath. Okay, so we're going to be aware of the breath. We're not going to grab onto it or try to concentrate on it, as we were talking about with Bill, but you're just going to be aware of it. Now, as you sit there right now, breathing through your nose, as you inhale, notice that the air feels cool around your nostrils. Notice that? And as you exhale, you're going to feel a warmth at the top of your lip. So that's where our focus is going to be for this exercise. There's different ways of doing this, but just focus there. So you're sitting there and you're noticing cool, warm, cool, warm. So you're following the breath in terms of just those sensations. Now, don't try to regulate the breath. Just notice it. If your breath is quick and shallow, let it be quick and shallow. If it's slow and deep, let it be slow and deep. But just notice it, okay? We're going to, as we get started, I'm going to have you do a cleansing breath and a body scan, and then we'll go into the meditation. But every time that you realize that your mind has grasped onto something, there's voices outside in the hallway, you're thinking about those, or some thought pops into your head, just come back to cool, warm, okay? Just come back to that. Now, to get started, we're going to take a cleansing breath. And the cleansing breath is a slow inhale to the count of 3, hold for the count of 3, and then exhale to the count of 3. So right now, go ahead and take a cleansing breath. And as you exhale, just feel the tension leaving you. Just let yourself sink deeper into the chair. Feel the chair holding you up from underneath. Just let your body relax. Take another cleansing breath. Now, as you sit there, we're going to do a body scan. And imagine that there is a beam of laser light that starts at the top of your head and is slowly just moving down your body, just a bar of light. And everywhere the light touches, you're going to relax. So as the light hits the top of your head, just relax your scalp. You might be amazed how you're holding tension up there. Relax the top of your head. As it comes down and hits your forehead, relax your forehead, relax your eyebrows. Just let them go. Now around your eyes, relax your eyes. Down your cheeks, your mouth. Just let your face relax. The light is moving down your neck. And as it hits your shoulders, let your shoulders drop. It's amazing how much tension that we hold in our shoulders. Just let them drop to your sides. Down your arms. To your hands. All the way down to your feet.